Good morning, Miami Lakes Canvas Real Estate Team. This is yours truly, Coach Joel Melian. Today is Wednesday, May 24th, and I'm coming to you from the office here in which I will be conducting this training that I am sure will be of value and benefit to each and every one of you who are basically starting this business or even been in this business for a considerable amount of time. And it is, you have a contract, now what? So it's going to be two parts to this training. One, I'm going to focus on the sale and purchase contracts. I'm going to also focus and speak about the buyer side and the sell side, but mainly is going to be based on the buyer side. And then the second part, it's just really about the lease contracts and rentals. So I will break this training up in two parts. I'm thinking that I will be maybe about an hour or less than an hour. So right now it's almost 10:15 and I should be done about 11:15 at the latest. And then I'll open it up for Q&A, or even in between, if I need a pause, I'll ask for any Q&As as I move from one page to another. Or if you have any questions, put it on the chat for those who are on Zoom. And if not, raise your hand, basically. And if not, actually raise your hand. So with that said, let me just check something out here real quickly as to where I'm at. Okay. Doesn't matter. I was trying to fix my camera, but it doesn't matter because the most important thing is really this document that you guys are taking a look at, and I'll adjust accordingly. All right. So for sale and purchase contracts, first things first, make sure you have all of the required disclosures for the broker compliance purposes. That means sales and purchase contract, all the addendums, the other disclosures, the wire fraud, and anything else that the office requires for each and every one of you in order for you to get paid at the closing of the transaction. So that is first and foremost. The second thing is make sure you obtain the ID, the copies of the photo IDs for the parties you are representing. This is one of the requirements of our office here for compliance purposes. If you're representing a buyer, the first step is, once you have a contract, in order to move the contract forward, is obtain the escrow deposit check or refer to the title company for wiring instructions. All right. So again, this is mainly for buyers. You have the contract, your contract is accepted, you have an escrow deposit that is due within 3 days for the most part. That's what I would put if I would be representing a buyer. That way it gives me 3 days to secure the escrow deposit. Okay, so you obtain the check, the escrow deposit check, made out to Title Logic if you're going to close with Title Logic. If you're not going to close with Title Logic for A, B, or C reasons, then you would deposit it here with Canvas Real Estate. And if not, if there's a third party, and again, if you're dealing with foreclosures, or perhaps if you're dealing in a transaction that the seller requires for the for their title company to be used, then if that is the requirement, then you're not going to lose a transaction over where the escrow deposit is going to be held at. Therefore, you will make it out to that other title company. And if not, again, obtain the wiring instructions from whatever title company you're going to be using. I do not know if we provide wiring instructions for here for Canvas. I'm pretty sure we do, but I have not gone through that process, so I cannot tell you if we do or not. All right, I just got from our owner, our broker, that yes, we do. So we do provide wiring instructions for Canvas Real Estate. Then, once that is submitted within a short relative time, and depending on when you get it, if you get it on the third day at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock, that the escrow deposit is made, and you need to provide a copy of the escrow letter, then you need to do that ASAP, as soon as possible. If not, within a relative period of time from one day to another, obtain a copy of the escrow deposit letter. And this goes, as you could see, no matter whatever side you're representing, this process, you need it. Whether you're representing a seller or you're representing a buyer, you need to have an escrow deposit letter. And again, all these documents that you obtain, they need to be uploaded to Dotloop, and submit for review. Moving on. If you're representing the buyer, refer a minimum of 3 inspection companies. So now you have a contract, you have an inspection period, 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, my recommendation, and then again, you run your own business however you wish and you like. However, my recommendation as your coach, as a real estate coach here at the office, as one who mentors and one who encourages and just shows the agents the processes, I recommend that you refer a minimum of 3 inspection companies. Now, the reason for this is if you refer one company and something goes wrong, the first person that is going to get going to have their pointed finger, or you're going to have a pointed finger towards, is going to be you, because you only referred one company. However, if you refer 3 companies and you let the buyer do their due diligence, inquire, do their online reviews, check information, whatever it is, then let them select it. And as they select it, let them, you could help them out, let them know, okay, select a company and I'll schedule the appointment for you, or let them schedule the appointment, because most likely they want to be in attendance and they want to be there in person during the property inspection. So let them schedule, just give them your time periods. Again, as I coach all the agents, and again, this is a training group coaching mastermind for productivity coaching as well. All your appointments should be made in the afternoon, provided that you're able to. If for any reason you cannot, then by all means do them in the morning. But the recommendation is do all your appointments in the afternoon. The reason for that is that way you give yourself time in the morning to lead generate and prospect. That's the only reason why I recommend for appointments to be made in the afternoon. Now, once the inspection is scheduled, make sure that you do it within the due diligence period. So again, listen to these words. You have an inspection period / diligence period. That means that everything that needs to be found out about the property needs to be done within this time period. That is there in the contract. Inspection period. It doesn't name it due diligence period, but it's known as practice in this business that the inspection period is also known as the due diligence period. Okay, so everything that you need to find out, you do it within this time period, and confirm the scheduled inspection appointment with all the parties. So if you're the buyer, if you're representing the buyer, you confirm that appointment with the listing agent. That way the listing agent confirms it with the seller. So you need to work as a team on that part in scheduling the inspection. Now, if representing the buyer, make sure the buyer applies for financing within the 5 days as per most standard contracts. So if you look at your contract, it says buyers must apply for financing within 5 days. If for any reason your buyer does not apply for financing within 5 days, and let's say down the road, a problem comes up with the contract and the time periods are not met, guess what? One of the first things that is looked at is, when did the buyer apply for financing? If you're beyond the 5 period, if the buyer and you as the representative, as the buyer's agent, if this was not done within 5 days, this buyer could find themselves in default of the contract. And guess what? That escrow deposit may be jeopardized. Okay, so again, very important. Make sure your buyers apply for their financing within 5 days. Don't take it for granted. Speak with the loan officer. And to protect yourself, and I didn't put it on here, but I'm going to say it verbally, to protect yourself, communicate by email. Send the loan officer an email and tell them, hello, so-and-so. Just want to confirm that the buyer has applied for their financing. Please confirm. Reply by email. Thanks. Get that email. Now you're protected. Otherwise, if you leave it up in the air, anything can happen. Don't leave things to chance. Okay? Remember always this: the devil is in the details. Okay, I'll repeat it again. The devil is in the details. This is a business. It's a very detailed business. And you have to be detailed. You have to read. Okay? Read, read, read. Don't take things for granted. All right? Now, if there is an association, again, apply within 5 days as per their standard contracts, unless otherwise agreed to. So here's an example. So you have the financing, you have the inspection, you have, there's a condo association or homeowners association, whatever it is, there's time period. If you need to go beyond those time periods, it's okay, as long as you communicate it in writing and you get it in writing. That means that it requires for you to write an addendum extending these inspection period, the application period, the inspection. So whatever it is, the inspection period, the application periods, or the financing, you could extend that. Just because it's there in the contract doesn't mean that you have to do it. And if you don't do it, that, there's a problem. No, if you get it extended, it's okay. All right. So again, apply for the association within 5 days as per the standard contracts, unless otherwise agreed to. If it is a condo, obtain a copy of the condo docs as soon as possible, because until you don't, you may have a buyer that may back out of a contract. So I'm going to speak on the listing side on this case, in this particular example. So now you have a condo that's listed, you have it on the contract, and now 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you did not provide these condo docs. Let's say for A, B, or C reason, that buyer decides to back out. He goes to an attorney, and now the attorney looks at the contract and he tells the buyer, have you received your condo docs? If the buyer tells him no, that is a reason to cancel the contract, because it is stated there that the buyer requested the condo docs. And I believe, and I don't have the contract in front of me now, but I believe there's a certain time period to provide those condo docs. Okay. Or maybe not. Let me retract that statement. So your buyer or the buyer, if you're, again, I'm talking about a listing, if you're a listing agent and you're representing a seller, if you provide the condo docs, the buyer has up to 3 days to cancel the contract. So what will they do? You provide them the condo docs, and they want to back out of the contract. They'll ask you, okay, I need the condo docs. I haven't received them. Fine, you provide it to them. Within those 3 days, the buyer, for any reason, they'll say, I do not want to purchase the condo due to the condo docs that have been provided. I'm not in agreement with them. I don't like what page 5 says, and I don't like what page 25 says. That's it. Plain and simple. They send you the release and cancellation of contract, and you need to start again finding a buyer. So this is the importance of getting the condo docs up front, go through the 3-day period. Once that is done, now you're able to move forward on your contract. This is what I will call bulletproof your transaction. Remember, there's different loopholes in every contract. And one of the loopholes to getting out of a contract is the condo docs situation. So you being aware and you being a professional and highly trained real estate agent, you know that in advance. So therefore, you bulletproof your transaction. Okay. Also, one other thing. Also obtain the initials that the condo docs were provided to the buyer. So on the condo docs addendum, there's an area there that says buyer received condo docs, okay, on such and such a date. Now, it doesn't have for initials there, so that means you go to dotloop and you create it, and you put there next to that, and that a term, the initials of the buyer that they received it today, May 24th, okay? So get that in writing, because if you don't have it in writing, then it's your word and the buyer's word. Or if you're representing the seller, it is your word and the buyer's agent's word that the documents weren't provided, or better said, that the buyer didn't receive the condo doc. So it's always good if you provide it, then get the initials on it. By the way, there's also a document somewhere in dotloop or Farbar that says it's confirmation of the receipt of the condo docs. So for me, for practicality, I just use the condo association addendum, get initials. That usually does the job. Simple is better. Now, follow up with your clients at least once a week to keep them updated. This is just good business practice and standards. Now, depending on your customer, they might want an update every hour on the hour, or every day, or every couple hours. Now, you set the standard, okay? So what you do is, as a standard, it's your business. You tell your customer to put them at ease. It says, Mr. Seller or Mr. Buyer, I will keep you updated as things arise or as things evolve in the transaction. I will keep you up to date. However, the one expectation you could have is that I will reach out to you and give you an update once a week. That usually is good, and it's acceptable by our customers, the customers we serve. Now, there's going to be some transactions that you're communicating not only once a week, but once a day, or perhaps multiple times a day. It just depends on the transaction. But a good practice is that at least once a week, you keep them updated as to what is going on in your contract. And last thing on this page, and then I'm going to open it up for any questions, any Q&A that you may have, and this will be the time that you could ask any questions. So make sure the title company orders and receives the following. There's 3 parts, and 3 parts, the function of the title company. Number 1, title lien search. That is something that they do. They do the title lien search. They provide a title commitment to the lender, and you're going to get all this paperwork, and it's gonna look like whatever, Chinese, the Chinese alphabet, because you might not understand it. I, for myself, I've made a decision. I'm not going to interpret legal documents. So they send it to me, I receive it, I put it in my folder. Any questions, anything arises, hey, Mr. Attorney, hey, Mrs. Title Company, Irina in this case, or the attorney that I use, whatever it is, I have a question. The buyer has a question. Okay, refer it to the attorneys. So that's title lien search. The second one is the municipal lien search. This is the one that shows open permits, code violations, expired permits, whatever may be going on with the property, with the municipality, whether with the city or with the county. So this is another thing that the title company orders. And the last one, if you're selling a property within a homeowners association or a condo association, the estoppel letter, okay? The title company orders an estoppel letter, okay? So you want to make sure whatever side you're representing, whether a buyer or a seller, that these three things are ordered and received by the title company. So this is an ongoing thing. And then again, a once a week reaching out to these parties, to the title company, is usually good enough. Please provide a status update. And think of this as your checklist. That's something that I failed to share here. Look at this document, and I'm going to share, and this is going to be shared with each and every agent. This is your checklist. So you just use this and just check these items off as you go through these transactions, okay? So there's 3 items here that you need to check off, all right? So with that, I'm going to pause here, and I'm available to ask your questions. So I'm going to start with the agents that are here at the office in person for any questions. So I have Antronique and Ricardo, and ladies go first. So Antronique, any questions on anything I have shared? And speak loud, that way the recording records your question.
Well, not really questions, because you just
Speak loud, speak loud.
You know what I'm saying? I don't really have any questions, but I like how you strategically explain everything, like, from the top to the bottom, and I understood, and, I'm still learning. But what you were saying was stuff that I actually been through, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I had to do that, it's good, and I remember these things, but.
Okay. All right. So I don't know if you heard Antronique, but Antronique says that as I was going through this particular page, that I was going step by step. She's just involved with a transaction, and she said, yeah, I remember of going through these steps, and that this is good information to follow, and the way it's being explained, item by item. All right. So thank you for sharing, Antronique. I got Ricardo here to my right hand. Give me 5, Ricardo. Maybe they can hear it. Maybe they can hear a high five. All right. So any questions?
No, but there's useful information I could use for whenever I secure my first buyer.
Okay,
I could look at this document.
awesome. All right.
No, I could use this for my first buyer.
Melody y Regla. Saludos a Melody. Voy a empezar con Regla. Regla, unmute. Dígame si tienes alguna pregunta.
No question.
No questions. Good. Melody, ¿alguna pregunta?
Hola, no, ninguna pregunta.
Perfecto. Ya me enteré. Felicidades.
Muchas gracias.
Ah, bien. All right. So we're going to continue. Now, be aware in keeping tabs on the following. Be aware of the inspection period, the loan approval period, the condo association approval, and your closing date. That is what you are keeping the eye on, the dates that these things need to happen in the calendar. You need to watch it, okay? So an inspection period, you want to make sure that you don't go beyond the inspection period. The loan approval period, very, very important. If it's 25 days, 30 days, make sure that it does not go beyond this time period, because otherwise it becomes a cash transaction. And now your customer that you're representing may find himself in a bind. Okay? Yeah, write them down, and then as at the end,
Okay, yeah, that's
I'll
fine.
answer, okay? And then the condo association approval, you need to make sure that the process with the condo association is going through. And then always a closing date. You never want to find yourself out with an expired closing date, because once it goes beyond the closing date, it creates a world of problems emotionally and mentally for the parties that you're representing, for the buyer or the seller. So if your closing date is scheduled today, May 24th, and it's not closing, you want to make sure before you go to bed that night that you're going to do whatever it takes for you to get this contract extended. Do not leave it up to chance, okay? Look what I put here, very important. If you reach a deadline date and it has not been completed, you need to make sure you extend it in writing by both parties, buyer and seller. Continuing, keep all parties updated once a week and obtain updates, recommendations, either on a Monday or Thursday. Again, I'm repeating something I said earlier, but something that works for me, either on a Monday or on a Thursday. So let's say you updated your customer on a Monday, then you update them next Monday. If you don't update them next Monday, then you could go up to Thursday, because remember, your commitment was once a week. So if you did it on Monday this week, next week, if you don't do it on Monday, that's fine, provided that you do it on Thursday. Okay? And also get updates from the lender and title company, and if representing the seller, the buyer's agent. Okay? So, because they have to be responsible also for their transaction. So instead of you if you're representing the seller, instead of you reaching out to the lender, you reach out to the buyer's agent. You tell them, hello, Mr. Buyer Agent or Mrs. Buyer Agent, please provide me an update as to your buyer's process. How are things coming along? Because they have a vested interest in this transaction, so they should be up to date as well. And as well with the title company, send an email to the title company. Hey, please provide a status update. Okay. Now, here, the final goal is to obtain a clear to close. At the end of the day, everything that we work for is to obtain a clear to close. Once you do, you schedule and arrange with all parties for the closing. So now you have closing date is May 24th, today. You should have had a clear to close 2 or 3 days before. Something I failed to note on here. And it is that the buyers need to receive 3 days in advance from the closing date, something called the TRID of FIRPTA. Okay. I'm sorry, the TRID. No, it's not on there. Okay. TRID. What that means, the TRID means, is that they have to look at their documents at their buyer's closing disclosures 3 days in advance before the closing. So if your closing is on the 24th, you need to get ahead of this on Friday of last week. If your closing would be today, because you got to get 3 days. Now, okay, sure. All right. So if your closing is done today, remember, you got to keep in mind 3 days that the buyers need to sign some disclosures, their closing disclosures 3 days before closing. So if your closing is today, the 24th, you need to make sure that they did so by Friday of last week. Sometimes, depending on the lender, it could be Monday, so just 3 days. But just keep that little, make that mental note about buyers needing to sign their documents 3 days before. At least it's a disclosure from the lender. That shows their interest, their interest, their payment, and the terms of what their payment is gonna look like. So it's a disclosure that they receive, okay? So again, the important thing is. I got lost here for a minute. Give me a second. So the final goal is to obtain a clear to close. Once you do, schedule and arrange with all parties for the closing. And again, just make sure that that 3-day disclosure is signed before that. Now, if you're working with a buyer, do the final walkthrough 1 or 2 hours before the scheduled closing. So again, if your closing is today at 2 o'clock, May 24th, you want to do the walkthrough either at 12 or at 1 o'clock. The reason for that is to avoid any issues with the property. What do I mean by issues? You want to make sure that all the personal items have been moved out. Number one. Number two, you want to make sure that all the appliances that your buyer agreed to purchase with the home, they're there. You want to make sure that there is no squatters, that there is no one living behind, that no one is there. And you want to make this in the shortest time period as possible, because once you sign at the closing table and the keys are given, that's it. The buyer is responsible for everything that was left at the property or anything that's going on with the property. So in order to avoid any liabilities or any issues, you want to do this 1 to 2 hours before the scheduled closing. All right. Now, recommendations. Obtain closing gifts for your buyers. Recommendation is a gift card to Home Goods along with a thank you card will always be welcome, as they will remember you. Why is it that I recommend this? Is because it's just good practice. It's just your way of showing gratitude, being thankful. And a Home Goods card, guess what? Because anything that they buy with that gift card is going to be a reminder of their purchase and of you. So you always want to have that, and always want your customers to remember that the service that you provided to them. And one way to do so is you'll provide a Home Goods gift card along with a thank you card. Another thing, after closing, obtain their online reviews to start building your ratings, your online ratings. Least but not last, upload all your closing documents to .loop and submit for review. And after closing, upload a copy of the closing statement and the commission check. Okay. Now, very important, and this is the last thing on sales and purchase contracts, and then I'll open it up for questions again. Very important, upon executing any addendums, send to all parties for review and obtain confirmation that it was received. Okay, so you have an addendum extending the closing date. Get it executed. Now, who needs that document? The title company needs it, and the lenders need it. Anything that you execute that is part of the contract, need to make sure you get it to all the parties involved, and that is necessary for them to be known, for them to be aware of. We had a situation with an agent that there was a credit and it was not on the closing statement, and then it became an issue on the closing day or a couple of days before closing. So that's why this is being noted here. So questions now. Again, I'm going to ask those that are here with me in the room, any questions? I believe Antronique has a question.
Oh, it was earlier when you said that, this was something about when the loan date expired. You said, when you say cash, my question is, when you say cash buyer, did you mean that they can't do the loan anymore?
Well, no. So what I mean by that, so the question is, what happens if you have a loan approval period and it expires. Okay. So what happens at that moment is that now you don't have a contingency to finance it. That means if that buyer for what A, B, or C reasons is not able to get the loan, then they need to pay in cash for that transaction.
See, that's, so the whole transaction is now a cash.
It becomes a cash transaction,
Unless the seller agreed to.
extending the
pay
inspection
one
period.
month.
Okay? So that's, so again, so the question is, what happens if you go beyond the loan approval period and you don't extend it? It becomes a cash transaction. If that buyer does not get his loan approved, they need to come up with the cash to close. And if not, then they could find themselves in a default of the contract and they could go after the escrow deposit.
Hmm.
So
The seller could go after.
they could go after the escrow deposit.
And the buyer.
Because if you don't close, no, because if you don't close, remember, you have a closing date.
Oh, and you did sign a contract, so it could become like void from.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
All right, Ricardo, any questions on any of these items that I just shared?
No.
No, all right. Melody, ¿alguna pregunta sobre estas últimas cosas que acabo de compartir?
No, ninguna pregunta.
Ok. Regla, ¿alguna pregunta?
No, no pregunto.
Okay. All right, great. So no questions so far. Now I'm gonna move over to, you have a contract now what? On lease contract. So we just covered the sales and purchase contracts. Now we're going to talk about lease. This is a little bit more simpler. So again, obtain ID copies for the lease contracts, all parties, or at least the party you're representing. That does not change. You need a copy of their IDs. Upload all documents and disclosures, including the IDs, for broker compliance to Dotloop and submit for review. Obtain an escrow deposit as soon as possible. So this one is a little bit, so on your sales and purchase agreement, it says 3 days. However, your rental agreements doesn't say 3 days. So what does that mean? That means as soon as possible. What's as soon as possible? Today, tomorrow, as soon as possible, as soon as you're able to. Okay, that way it doesn't stay hanging out there. And your tenant doesn't get doesn't default on his contract that was accepted. Okay. Now, deliver to Canvas Real Estate or the designated escrow holder the escrow deposit checks. Now, on this, I recommend for it to be a money order or a cashier's check. And I failed to write it here, but make sure that all escrow deposits for lease contracts, that they're cashier's check or money orders. Upload a copy of the escrow deposit check. So make sure you make a copy of the check and upload it to Dotloop as well. So that's part of the documents that you need to upload. If it's a condo, make sure the customers apply for the condo association approval, because that tenant cannot move into the property without a condo association approval. Okay, so you want to make this happen as soon as possible. Now, one thing, as you're writing contracts, if you have a condo association approval that is required, okay, so let's say it's you got a contract today and the move-in is June 15th. However, the condo association takes 30 days for approval. So you may have shot yourself on the foot in putting that that contract to move in by June 15th. Okay, so before you put a contract together, you want to try to find out, okay, how long is the association going to take, and make sure the contracts will read that. Needless to say, you're going to get a lease agreement after the contract is accepted, contract to lease. And something else that I failed here, and actually I'm going to edit this document, so anything that I've missed, I'm going to send it, but make sure that you get also the lease agreement. So you got the contract to lease, you're going through this whole process. You delivered the escrow deposit check. Now, on this, the condo association approval, I would do this after you get the lease agreement, just to make sure that everything is agreed to, that there's no problems, because now if you apply for the condo association and you don't have the lease agreement, and the lease agreement is different, or there's something that your tenant doesn't agree to, and you cannot work it out, you cannot negotiate it, now your customers invested the money and spent the money in applying for the condo association without having a lease agreement. Regardless, most condo associations will require for a copy of the lease to also be submitted. So that's not, that's something that, it'll just happen by default. Also, obtain the condo association approval, no different between this and a sale. That process will be the same. And to avoid any delays to your compensation, always obtain, as I mentioned before, a cashier's check, a money order.
And
And
how
Martin,
about the tenant screening as well, right?
okay,
Yeah,
yes. The tenant screening, that's the third party platform that we use. That also should be uploaded to Dotloop. Provided that we get a copy of it.
provided.
Sometimes we don't, but if we do, then by all means.
Yeah, because if we upload it and we show that the tenant or tenants have paid the $85, that's the rental service fee of the file, because if not, it's charged to the agent. So I thought
Okay.
it's important to
Oh,
reject that.
Oh, repeat that again, Marlene, because this is something that I
Oh,
was not
okay.
aware.
Yeah, in other words, just like in sales, we have a sales service fee of $495
Uh-huh.
that is charged to the seller or the buyer, depending who we represent, or
Okay.
both. If we happen to double end the deal and represent both sides, the same thing applies for rentals. We have the $85 rental service fee. And that is charged to the tenant when they go to your website and complete the rental application. That covers the handling of the file and also the credit check, national eviction check, background check. They verify if the person's been, if the person is or is not on the sexual predator list, on the terrorist watch list, on the OFAC for laundering of money. And that report, we pull it from Tenant Reports, the third-party provider. So when the tenant completes the report, they pay the $85. So the system generates a report that has a file number, and one usually puts it in the loop to share it with, let's say, the listing agent along with the contract to lease, to provide background information, credit information, so on and so forth. So when we're doing the quality control of the file, and we review it, we see, oh, great, the tenant already paid this, did their tenant screening, so that covers the handling and that report entirely. Contrary to that, the office will deduct it from the commission of the agent.
Okay,
So that's how we make sure it's done one way or the other.
okay.
So they.
Now,
pay-
so I have a question on that, Marlene.
Yes,
So let's say we use a different third party, Rent Spree, or like the system that the MLS has. Would that also be, is that acceptable, or we have to go through the portal of our website?
okay, the answer to that is the broker, the company is covering the errors and omission insurance policy for the agents. In order to be able to do a claim against the E&O, if there is a claim in 5 years, they have to show that they did the tenant screening through our third party
Gotcha.
provider.
Okay,
And that way we minimize our liability, because we provide that to the landlord. And the landlord is the one that ultimately makes the decision. Do they want that tenant or do they not want that tenant? We put the burden of decision on the landlord.
gotcha.
Okay, and that way they would never have a reason to come back and put a claim against our E&O policy,
Okay,
because It was ultimately their decision. We didn't force the tenant upon them. And tenant reports will back up the information that was provided of the tenant for them to have made that decision in the first place.
Okay,
And it's just, we have bulked it together as the handling fee for that transaction and the tenant screening, and it covers up to 2 people. And they don't necessarily need to be a married couple. It could be 2 roommates living together, for example. So the $85 is a very nominal fee that is charged, and it serves the purpose of the file handling at the office and that full comprehensive tenant reports, which I've seen sometimes, and they could be 15, 20 pages. It's
Okay.
very, very detailed about the background of the person and the creditworthiness.
gotcha. Okay,
Okay,
fair enough. So again, just to avoid the $85 handling fee from our office, if you use the tenant screening from our website, you avoid that. And that's basically, that's as simple as that regarding that subject.
I hope you didn't mind my.
No, not at all.
interjecting that.
I always welcome your,
And I have a question because I know you did contracts before, but
Yes.
it just came up and I'm curious. How do agents determine when a contract is signed, let's say today, Wednesday, the 24th, right? The calendar days, which is the effective date of the contract if they sign today, and when do you start counting the days for escrow, association, application, inspection, appraisal, the whole 9 yards?
okay. So I'm gonna give you the Joelma Leon answer, which may be long, but I'll summarize. it.
Okay,
The Joelma Leon, and this is really due to, it's based on interpretation. And depending on who you're dealing with, what attorneys are going to deal with. I count day 1, the day of my contract, and I know I'm not gonna fall short as to what the effective date is. Now,
you're right.
okay, I'm right, all right.
People- And
No,
other
because-
people start counting effective date today, so tomorrow is day 1.
Yeah, but because that's really what is interpreted and what the industry uses is the day after. So you have an executed contract today, day 1 is tomorrow. For me, day 1 is today. Now, I'm gonna add something else to this.
A great caveat.
So this is, and I know we were talking about lease contracts, but being that Marlene asked and regarding sales and purchase contracts. So with the new contracts, there's something there within the contract that says you send it to the listing agent today, but the listing agent, or let's say you send it on Friday. So if you send me a contract on Friday after 5 o'clock, chances are that I might not see it this particular weekend because it's Memorial Weekend. I might not see it till Tuesday because I'm out of town or I'm on a cruise or whatever. Okay, technically, until I don't confirm that I received it, basically there's not a contract in place.
True.
That's with the new contracts, old contracts before they're revised. So why do I say that? You want to make sure that when you send the contract to the listing agent, any changes, again, usually happens with any changes, when any counter offers, anything that was changed to the contract, when you send it back, you want to make sure you get a confirmation from the listing agent that they received it. What do? You send it, send them a text, please confirm by email the receipt of my email of the latest contract, of the fully executed contract. Again, until all parties don't have not initialed any changes. And again, what I'm talking about is you have a contract, it's typed out by the state and what you printed. If you make a line over anything, that needs to be initial. Doesn't matter. No ifs and buts, no questions asked.
And to include addendums, right?
Absolutely. And that goes for addendums as well. Okay, so anything that is scratched off on any contract or addendum, it needs to be initial, not by one party, by both parties, the sellers and the buyers. Until that's not done, you really don't have a fully executed contract. You got a partially executed contract, but not a fully executed contract.
And for example, these calendar days, the question, I just got asked that question 5 minutes ago in the office. The calendar days of the as-is contract includes weekends and holidays, but what if one of those expiration dates, let's say inspection falls on a weekend or a holiday? What happens
Great.
then?
Great question. So if your deadline falls on May 27th, on a Saturday, being that we have Memorial Weekend this week, it's on Monday, that deadline really gets pushed over to the next business day, which would be, in this case, would be May 30th. So if a deadline falls on the weekend, it gets extended to the next business day, whatever that business day
Thank
is.
you for clarifying that, Joel.
You're welcome,
You have
Marlene.
no idea how many different people in different companies interpret it different.
So I'm glad we are on the same page, and that's why we're Canvas Real Estate Miami Lakes.
And
Yes.
And that's the way the book said it too, because I remember that from class.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And I've had to sometimes challenge another agent. I had an agent that Inalvis, our attorney, had to speak to. Because speaking of changes, there was one little change that was made on the addendum for the association. And until our buyer finished initially that last change, the contract was not supposed to be effective until the following day. The listing agent interpreted the prior date. But for the sake of the transaction, I didn't want to argue with the listing agent, but we at Canvas want to make sure you know exactly how days are calculated. And if you ever have someone challenging that, please bring it to our attention so we can help and clarify it, so you never put in jeopardy the deposit of your customer, because we have to be on top of those dates. Okay, that's it. I'm going
All
back
right.
into my little office here.
Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
Now, the
Joel.
last item here, going back to the lease contracts, is fill out the walkthrough and upload to .loop. So there is one additional document besides the contract to lease, besides the lease agreement, besides the escrow letter, the wire fraud, that needs to be uploaded to .loop, and that includes the walkthrough. Okay? And again, very important, upon executing any addendums, send to all parties for review and obtain confirmation that it was received. So with that said, this ends the part of this training. You have a contract, now what? So I'm gonna open it up once again for any questions. And if no questions, we will stop the recording. So I'm gonna go to those who are on Zoom. Regla, ¿alguna pregunta?
No,
No, perfecto. Melody, ¿alguna pregunta?
no, ninguna pregunta.
Perfecto, me alegro. All right, and for those of you who are here, I'm going to Vanessa. I know she just came in, but any questions on anything on this last part that you were able to participate?
No.
No? All right, and Trinique,
No, but I just wanted to know, are these contracts frequent?
yeah, if you're working with renters, how many have you had? You've had 2 in the last month or a month and a half, right? All right. So they're as frequent as you make them to be.
No, but, hold on, but lease and renting. is
It's
not
the same. It's the same. Lease contracts. You got a contract to lease, which is,
Okay, I'm thinking of the different, what I'm thinking of here, lease, I'm thinking of something else.
a residential lease.
Yeah, but renting and leasing is.
It's the same.
Also, it's called lease contract?
Yeah. That's what it is.
I'm thinking of something else.
You got a rental agreement.
And it's different from when you lease. I'm thinking, maybe I'm thinking about when you buy a car, the lease and,
Oh, yeah.
it's different.
That's probably what you're thinking.
Yeah,
of. Yeah. Okay. And least but not last, Ricardo Urusunu, any questions?
No question.
All right, awesome. All right, guys, so I will be sending this recording to every agent, and if not, it's on YouTube. So in between, I hope all of you have a great day. It's Memorial Weekend. I hope you guys have a great long weekend. Get some rest, have some fun, eat some watermelon. I'm gonna eat watermelon this weekend. I usually buy the watermelon on Memorial Weekend. I only buy it once a year, and it's usually Memorial Weekend. So enjoy your weekend. Take care, and God bless.